Well, what's very unusual about your career and the beginnings of it is you did crew work before you started writing and directing.
I did. I started off as a PA on Hell Night.
Hell Night.
Hell Night.
The Linda Blair classic.
The Linda Blair classic.
And you got to see what a movie looked like being made.
Yes, I did. It wasn't quite the experience of, say, having watched Kubrick at work, for example, but still, this kicked off a sort of a 6-year period for me of working on a very basic, marrow in the bone kind of crew level, and mostly in the art department, mostly set dressing, set construction, and 6 years of that was a fantastic film school because I never went to college.
Right.
I thought, unless you're really gonna make use of what college has to offer, you really shouldn't.
Well, you were laying your own groundwork here.
I was, and who's to say that this was any easier or another path would have been better? Hey, I mean, there is no alternate universe I can tune into and go, oh, look how Frank is doing since he went to college. Maybe I should have gone. Yeah, you can't do that. You can't make that comparison. But the results have not been disappointing by any means.
Of course
it's
not.
been, but it took a while from when I graduated high school to when I actually got paid to write a screenplay. Nightmare on Elm Street 3 was a period of 9 years, and that says something in favor of belief, persistence, willingness to keep going because you're too stupid to stop, that kind of thing.
And then you made a short film that started a relationship that continues to feed your career now. You had a dollar baby deal with Stephen King to make The Woman in the Room.
Which is not a movie I recommend you rush out and see. I don't know what Steve saw in it, frankly, that he responded to, but he liked it. It was a half-an-hour short based on a very moving story of his called The Woman in the Room. It was published in his very first short story collection, Night Shift. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to try and make a short film. It wasn't student film because I wasn't in college. I was a, $400 a week set dresser when I could get the work. But I really wanted to make this movie, and I thought, I'll send him a letter, see what happens. And he responded. I think probably he was fascinated by what the hell, of all the stories he'd written, like what the hell was some kid wanting to do, making a movie out of a very personal story of his based on his mother dying of cancer. So he agreed to allow me the right to make that short film. And it took, how long did it take? I think it took like two years to make this 30-minute film because, I had to put it through post myself, so I slept for a year with a moviola, 16mm film, piles of it everywhere in my bedroom. Yeah, I earned $11,000 that year, and 7 of it went into finishing my movie. I actually got audited that year. The IRS wanted to know how I could only make $11,000 and have spent $7,000 on something deductible.
Yeah. Well.
And how is it that you can live for a year on $4,000? And I said, I don't know either. If I ever figure it out, I'll tell you. Yeah. But I did it.
Let's talk a little bit about the appeal of Stephen King. To me, what makes King special is that he connects in a very personal way. It's not about the monster in the closet. It's about the people who own the house where the monster is in the closet.
And often the people who lived there before.
Yeah, it's great characters and great storytelling that just happens to cross the line into the supernatural.
And really delivers when it does.
And when it does things that are unashamed.
Yeah.
And powerful and propulsive. But the humanity behind it, I think, is why he's been the world's best-selling author.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it really does come back to the idea that, people want to hear stories about people. It goes back to cave days. Let me tell you what happened to poor Og on the hunt today.
Right.
Because it's a really cool story. Let me tell you about it. I don't think that's ever going to change. Other distractions will come along. People will get video gamed from one end to the other. But at the end of the day, I think they're really going to want to sit down and see a movie like Up. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because it's a beautiful story, well told. And I just don't think that's going to change. And by the way, when people say, well, actors are being phased out, and I was like, no, they're not. There's those voices. The computers aren't doing those voices. those are actors. The tradition goes back to the earliest days of the film industry. Disney was doing the same thing that Pixar is doing today. Yeah. And very well, by the way.
Yeah. But
give props to Pixar.
Well,
they're making some of the best movies today, I think.
But let's talk about voices, because, again, going back to Stephen King, his voice as a writer is unmistakable.
It is a very unique voice. It has often been imitated. Mm-hmm. But, you know, you can imitate without getting anywhere near the power of the original composition and the original composer. And King's got that remarkable ability to put you in the skin of the characters and take you on that journey. I mean, you really feel like they're taking you through their journey. And King does that better than just about any writer I've ever read. He's like Babe Ruth in his field. He's one of those prodigious, you know, very, very unique authors.
Translating that voice to film can be a very...
bitch.
Yes.
It can be a bear.
It can be a bitch. Now, a lot of the things I've done with Steve, most but not all, he has actually written the screenplays for himself. The ones you have done based on Steve's work, you have adapted yourself.
I have.
And it's been a very faithful voice, and yet you bring a lot of yourself into it.
That's true. That's true. It's always a fine line for me of infusing my sensibilities into Steve's. I'm always trying to make my sensibilities serve his original intent. I call it, you know, keeping in mind the voice of the author, because every author has a voice. But with many authors, a movie gets made from a really good book, and that voice seems completely gone. It's been co-opted and subsumed by the filmmaker's ideas or voice.
Right.
I'm always hoping at the end of the day that the people who are familiar with those books, with those literary works, go see the movie and feel like they saw the same story when they leave the movie theater, that it didn't get so co-opted or so translated, lost in translation.
And you're competing with their imagination when they read the book.
That's exactly right.
Because when you read the book, you have your own movie you're directing in your head.
Completely. So to get that is a huge compliment, because, you know, I don't take any good literary work, especially Steve King's, and try to frustrate anybody with it.
Right.
Probably the biggest liberty I took was with The Mist. Though I think that is 90%,
the ending of The Mist,
a very faithful, you know, 95% a very faithful thing to Steve's original, or at least in the feel of it.
Well, I believe
I took a huge ass, you know, I took a huge ass detour with the ending, because I really felt, I think sometimes movies do have to take a chance and piss you off and hold up a mirror to the audience that isn't the flattering one. You know, and at that point I was, and I still am, you know, the events of the 21st century have not been to my liking. You know, the gentler, more optimistic kid, you know, who made Shawshank is now, you know, I try not to let go of my optimism, but you know, but I'm a crabby old bastard now. You know, I see the game being rigged and re-rigged and re-rigged so many times, and as you go through life, you go, well, if the game is nothing but rigged, you know, if we're going to continue to make the same stupid mistakes, then what the hell value is there in our species? And at a certain point, I think as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, you want the opportunity to say that. You want the opportunity to say, you fuckers! Oh, you kids, get off my lawn! You know, what you know, whatever it is you're trying to say.